Chapter 1: Where I Was Born. My life has been an eventful one. I was born a slave, was the child of slave parents. Therefore, I came upon the earth free in godlike thought, but fettered in action. My birthplace was Dinwiddie Courthouse in Virginia. My recollections of childhood are distinct, perhaps for the reason that many stirring incidents are associated with that period. I am now on the shady side of 40, and as I sit alone in my room, the brain is busy, and a rapidly moving panorama brings scene after scene before me, some pleasant and others sad. And when I thus greet old familiar faces, I often find myself wondering if I am not living the past over again. The visions are so terribly distinct that I almost imagine them to be real. Hour after hour I sit while the scenes are being shifted, and as I gaze upon the panorama of the past, I realize how crowded with incidents my life has been. Every day seems like a romance within itself, and the years grow into ponderous volumes. As I cannot condense, I must omit many strange passages in my history. From such a wilderness of events, it is difficult to make a selection, but as I am not writing altogether the history of myself, I will confine my story to the most important incidents which I believe influenced the molding of my character. As I glance over the crowded sea of the past, these incidents stand forth prominently, the guideposts of memory. I presume that I must have been 4 years old when I first began to remember. At least I cannot now recall anything occurring previous to this period. My master, Colonel A. Burwell, was somewhat unsettled in his business affairs, and while I was yet an infant, he made several removals. While living at Hampton-Sydney College, Prince Edward County, Virginia, Mrs. Burwell gave birth to a daughter, a sweet black-eyed baby, my earliest and fondest pet. To take care of this baby was my first duty. True, I was but a child myself, only 4 years old, but then I had been raised in a hearty school, had been taught to rely upon myself, and to prepare myself to render assistance to others. The lesson was not a bitter one, for I was too young to indulge in philosophy, and the precepts that I then treasured and practiced, I believe developed those principles of character which have enabled me to triumph over so many difficulties. Notwithstanding all the wrongs that slavery heaped upon me, I can bless it for one thing: youth's important lesson of self-reliance. The baby was named Elizabeth, and it was pleasant to me to be assigned a duty in connection with it, for the discharge of that duty transferred me from the rude cabin to the household of my master. My simple attire was a short dress and a little white apron. My old mistress encouraged me in rocking the cradle by telling me that if I would watch over the baby well, keep the flies out of its face, and not let it cry, I should be its little maid. This was a golden promise, and I required no better inducement for the faithful performance of my task. I began to rock the cradle most industriously, when lo, out pitched little Pet on the floor. I instantly cried out, "Oh, the baby is on the floor!" And not knowing what to do, I seized the fire shovel in my perplexity and was trying to shovel up my tender charge when my mistress called to me to let the child alone, and then ordered that I be taken out and lashed for my carelessness. The blows were not administered with a light hand, I assure you, and doubtless the severity of the lashing has made me remember the incident so well. This was the first time I was punished in this cruel way, but not the last. The black-eyed baby that I called my pet grew into a self-willed girl, and in after years was the cause of much trouble to me. I grew strong and healthy, and notwithstanding, I knit socks and attended to various kinds of work. I was repeatedly told, when even 14 years old, that I would never be worth my salt. When I was 8, Mr. Burwell's family consisted of 6 sons and 4 daughters, with a large family of servants. My mother was kind and forbearing. Mrs. Burwell, a hard taskmaster, and as mother had so much work to do in making clothes, etc., for the family besides the slaves, I determined to render her all the assistance in my power, and in rendering her such assistance, my young energies were taxed to the utmost. I was my mother's only child, which made her love for me all the stronger. I did not know much of my father, for he was the slave of another man, and when Mr. Burwell moved from Dinwiddie, he was separated from us, and only allowed to visit my mother twice a year, during the Easter holidays and Christmas. At last, Mr. Burwell determined to reward my mother by making an arrangement with the owner of my father, by which the separation of my parents could be brought to an end. It was a bright day indeed for my mother when it was announced that my father was coming to live with us. The old weary look faded from her face, and she worked as if her heart was in every task. But the golden days did not last long. The radiant dream faded all too soon.